So I'm sure all of us by now have seen or heard about the Marvel movies. Huge, groundbreaking movies that have rippled throughout society and popular culture. But I'm sure one thing you didn't know is that Thor is a fake. Yeah, that's right, you heard me right. Thor, Stan Lee's character of the God of Thunder, is a completely ripped off version from an original that comes from a pantheon of gods in Northern Europe. So, basically, Thor, the long, blonde haired golden god, basically, so many things in the Marvel movies are completely false and fabricated from where he originally came from. And I want to go over a few of those things. So, first and foremost, one of the big ones is anyone who's watched the Thor movies has a little bit of love in their heart for Loki. Maybe it's only a little, but a little bit of love in their heart for Loki. And Loki actually is portrayed in the movie as Thor's brother. That's not any surprising news. However, in the original Norse pantheon, though Loki is actually Odin's brother, and Thor is technically Loki's nephew. What had happened in the Norse pantheon is basically Loki lived in the realm of chaos giants, and chaos giants were always in fire. Chaos is represented by fire. Actually, in their language, Logi is a word for fire. So Loki means fire. Loki was a fire giant, not a frost giant, and gets pulled out of his realm and branded by Odin and kept in the pantheon. And in the chaos realm, if you're branded by the outside world, you are hunted down and killed. So Loki had no home to return to and was immediately made orphan and captured and bonded to Odin. So that's the first big difference. The second big difference is a lot of emphasis is placed on Thor's hammer throughout the entire movie, to the point where there's Easter eggs all throughout with Thor taking the hammer and hanging it on the wall. There's memes going across the internet everywhere saying, the coat hanger is worthy, because the coat hanger could support the weight that only the worthy could hold. Well, in the movie, Loki had tried many attempts to try to pick up Thor's hammer. He tried so many different ways, and even to the point where the Hulk tried to budget and swing it in his Hulk form, and other characters throughout the Marvel movies also attempted to pick up this hammer as well. Well, there's a huge issue with this hammer. First and foremost, in the movies, the hammer is eventually given to Thor as he becomes worthy by Odin, who owned it first, and only the worthy could hold it after an incantation was put into it. In the beginning of the movie, Thor can just swing it around, but eventually Odin decides only the worthy can handle it, brands it, and hands it to Thor, who is now unable to swing it. I skipped some steps, but that's essentially how it went. So, in Norse pantheon, actually, Thor didn't start with the hammer, and Odin never gave it to him. Actually, Loki gave him the hammer. What happened was there was a bit of a clash between a couple different forgers, blacksmiths, down deep, far away from the Norse gods' realm. And Loki decided he wanted to not only try to find out who was the best forger of the land, he wanted to get some free materials and weapons out of it. So he goes down, pits them against each other, and eventually ends up with a bunch of gifts, including Odin's spear, which he pretty clearly thrusts in the air in a couple of scenes while he's in battle, and a couple of other things that are given to the gods as well. And another interesting hint number 3, strays a little away from Thor a little bit. However, Thor's sister, Hel, actually isn't his sister at all. Hel, or Hela in the movies, her name is Hel in the Norse pantheon. Hel is actually Loki's daughter, so not related to Thor by blood at all, completely separated, and she is the ruler of Hel. She has no claim over the realm of the gods up in the Norse pantheon. She was given Helheim, a completely different realm to manage and take control and care over. Now, in the Norse pantheons, there's a lot more shenanigans that Thor actually gets up to, which is really interesting. One thing that I did like about the Marvel movies is they depicted him as serious, yet oafy. That's where his funniness and his comedy comes from. kind of generally entitled and oafy and just doing dumb things, but with purpose and confidence. That's something that rings very true from the Marvel movies and from the Norse pantheon. There are all sorts of things that Odin gets himself into. And if you want to hear some stories that I've dug up about Norse mythology, I'd love to share them. They're really interesting. Just subscribe and let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to continue going into that. But continuing on with our list, the next thing that was very different between the Marvel movies and the Norse pantheon movies is a lot of the gods and their relationships were very different. So Thor in the movie has a romantic interest that is a land dweller or a earth mid-realm dweller. She's a scientist and she chases storms and things like that. Well, the gods did take interest in humans, and oftentimes in those stories mated with humans, whether it goes into it explicitly or just hints at it. But actually, Thor had a wife inside of all of it, and Thor's wife's name was Sif. She was also in the movie. And they had a couple moments where they were broing out. Sif was the one with all of the beautiful armor. Well, Sif in the Norse pantheon is known for having the most beautiful golden hair, to the point where there's actually a story about Loki coming along and shaving her head off, snipping it all off, and basically creating havoc. And that's actually what ended up giving Thor his hammer in the first place, is Loki got himself in trouble by taking Sif's hair off, and they had to replace it because her hair was a part of her goddess figure. So, continuing on with our lists of big changes from the Norse pantheon and Marvel. Surt. Surt is someone who shows up in a very small portion of one of the movies where there's a fire giant. I believe it's in the beginning of the movie where Hela makes her first appearance, and Loki and Thor come up against this big fire giant who is actually Loki's father in the original series in the Norse pantheon. However, they come up and Thor picks up the hammer and basically just smashes Surt to the point where his big metal face mask just spins on the ground like a hubcap and then eventually falls to the ground. Well, in the original series, Surt does come back to the land of the gods, Asgard. But in that, he slowly, over time, makes his way out of the Chaos Realm by being disturbed, by given fuel and many other things, and eventually comes up and levels everything. Surt is the apocalypse. He is the last stand. He is the destroyer, the end-all, be-all. He destroys everything before a few gods have managed to escape Helheim after everything's killed, and it's not the adults, it's their kids that end up escaping. That's a huge, big change as well. So, what I've learned through this process of watching Marvel is many times what the actual story is changed a lot. And it seems like a lot of creators take things that could have been golden content and polish them and change them to try to make them even better. But I am a big lover of the Norse pantheon. I've read many different tomes and books and scrolls and all different things and pursued this knowledge in a lot of different places, and they are some of the most funny, fascinating, interesting, and teachable stories that I have ever read. And if you want to hear more of them, go ahead and click that subscribe button so I can share those, because they are hilarious. But anyway, keep being you.